Today, we continue to hear from the silent witnesses who were there participating in the crucifixion of Jesus in unique ways. This afternoon, we will hear from the road.
Excuse me, I don't mean to disturb you. I guess you were resting in the pile along with the other discarded. What I need to say is, let me start over. I understand that you witnessed the events leading to the crucifixion of the one called Jesus Christ. Would you be so kind to share with us what happened from your point of view?
I guess I really shouldn't be surprised that you would come to me for information about the mockery of a trial of that humble man. After all, I've stopped being surprised since the events of that day.
Would you mind telling us about them?
If I may, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself first, and then tell you how I fit into the unusual events.
That would be fine.
I didn't used to have to ask permission of anyone. At one time, I was almost as close to royalty as their skin. I was as close as you can get without being born into the royal family. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Oh, that's quite all right.
As I'm sure you can tell, I am not a run-of-the-mill piece of fabric that became an common article of clothing for an average person. First of all, I am made of the finest only material ever woven into cloth. The greatest care was taken when I was made to be sure that there were no flaws in me, so that I was acceptable even to royalty. I was cared for and given the finest texture, the softest sheen, and the smoothest of delicate skins. After that, I was soaked in a solution that could give me the deepest of royal scarlet color. Then I was handed over to the best tailors, and they shaped me artistically into a royal robe, fit for a king, or in my case, a governor. That's how I began.
I see, that's quite impressive.
Light, however, takes some unusual twist as we traveled the pathway. Oh, to be sure, I was discovered immediately to be the finest garment available in the province. I was picked from scores of others to serve as the outer skin of the most noble ruler. I was carefully wrapped and gently delivered to the palace. Following the careful scrutiny of many servants and then of the ruler himself and his wife, I was given a position of honor in the royal plaza. I had it made.
So it would appear.
Being the finest of my kind, I was chosen to attend almost all the fine and fancy functions royalty are privileged to. I went to parties, banquets, affairs of state, and was even worn around the palace because I made the governor feel so grand. I felt sorry for robes of lesser quality because they were feeling neglected when I was chosen and they weren't. But that is the privilege of being the best. It's not my fault.
It sounds as though you did have a maid. To be so appreciated and valued by the governor himself. That must have made you feel like royalty too.
Oh dear, I sound dreadfully stuffy, don't I? It's so easy to get caught up in the glory of the past and forget, who you really are. Well, just like any bubble, you must expect the burst to come along sometime. My ego swelled all out of proportion. I was really shabby when my bubble finally did burst. You see, there came that dreadful day when a finer robe was brought to the governor. A robe that was imported from an exotic country. A robe that was fresh and new. A robe that was free of any signs of wear. A robe that had no stains on it. A robe that took the governor's attention away from me.
You must have been upset and irked.
I was devastated. I was hung back in the closet. It felt as if I hung there forever. One day, one of the governor's servants came and did some spring cleaning. Guess who got tossed aside?
You ended up in a pile of rags?
I ended up in a pile with other discarded clothing. Well, yes, I might as well admit it. I ended up in a pile of rags. When you are in a pile together, you notice that you have more in common than you thought you did. As I became more and more wrinkled from being shoved around in the pile, I began to observe some stains on me that I had never noticed before. The governor, I knew, was not the neatest person in the world. He spilled just about everything. I hadn't realized how visible, though, those stains were. I guess I just didn't want to see them. But now, they seemed to jump out in front of my eyes as if they were haunting me, or better yet, taunting me.
Could we please get to what you want to share with us?
Oh, please forgive me. I didn't realize how much time I was spending on myself. Please let me tell you what happened to me. That is far more important than anything I had mentioned so far. It has to do with the event you asked me about, the trial and crucifixion of that prophet.
Right.
Well, the other rags, I mean clothes, and I were gossiping in our pile in the storeroom when we all quieted down because of the commotion outside.
Commotion?
We could hear an angry crowd yelling, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" We could hear the governor saying he could find no reason to execute the man. But the crowd just got angrier and louder. We were glad to be safe in the pile instead of out there in front of that crowd. Who knows what might have been splattered on us if the mob got angry enough. Anyway, the noise went on for quite a while. Then there was silence, absolute silence for a time. And then it started again. During this free-for-all, a soldier came in and began talking to one of the servants. The servants came over to the pile of us discards and fumbled around. All of a sudden, I felt her hand tighten around my arm. She pulled and tugged until she set me free from the middle of the pile. Then I was shaken violently.
Shaken?
It seems that the servant was trying to shake out my wrinkles. Goodness, it had taken a lot of abuse to get those wrinkles in. How did one expect that more abuse would get them out? Anyway, the soldier was smiling, as though he had found the prize he had been seeking. He began to laugh. He said something about eating the wrinkles in because they looked like they belonged to this king.
I see.
I was taken outside to the courtyard and held tightly for a few moments behind the soldier's back. Then he leaned over to another guard and showed me to him. They both laughed. They laughed madly. Others gathered around to see what was so funny, and they began to laugh too.
You must have been so embarrassed.
I was humiliated. I couldn't help it that I was wrinkled and stained. The governor did that to me. It wasn't my fault, I tell you. Why was I being made a fool of?
So what happened next?
As I looked around, my eyes caught a glimpse of the one who was on trial. He was standing in the center of the courtyard, facing the throne. His head was down, as if it was either worn out, or he was praying, or perhaps both. At any rate, I noticed that he wore simple sandals, a common garment, but the most hideous head covering I had ever seen in my life. He was wearing a crudely woven crown, made out of all things thorns. Thorns! His forehead was stained with the blood that flowed from the punctures caused by those thorns. His hands were bound. He stood still, but his body and his voice were still. All the while, the crowd yelled, "Crucify him!" And then someone would walk by and do the most awful things. They would spit on him, or beat him, or mock him. What he was going through made the rag pile look like the Garden of Eden, I tell you. As the tempo kicked up, the soldier holding me took me out to the center of the courtyard. He undraped me so that all could see I was a royal scarlet robe. They can also see that I was all stained and worn and wrinkled.
Oh, that must have been so difficult. What, you were the pride of the governor, and now you were being degraded in front of you and all of these subjects.
Oh, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. If you have any feelings at all, concentrate them on the humble figure standing before me. You see, he was more than a governor. He was a king, the pride of his father, and he was being degraded in front of all his subjects. While I was wrapped around him to get the appearance of stained, morgue and wrinkled royalty. You can't imagine how funny the people thought that was. The laughter was deafening. I wished I could curl up in the pile of rags and eyes. But I was powerless. After all, I'm only a robe.
You were very sorry for yourself.
Yes, I was draped about his shoulders, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And from him, of course. But that self-indulgent pity lasted only a short moment. I had been draped over the shoulders of royalty and formed myself to their bodies without wrinkle, wear, or stain. But I have never known what the real feeling of true royalty was until that moment. You know how some older people say they feel young inside, even though they are old and wrinkled on the outside?
Yes.
And how doctors can say that an old-timer has the heart of a 20-year-old? Well, now I know. I know what that means. As I was wrapped around this humble man's body, the wrinkles on the outside disappeared on the inside. The worn spots show on the outside, but on the inside, the weed of the fabric was as perfect as the day I was set free from the loom.
And the stains?
Let me tell you about the stains. I know this is the hardest part to believe. I know it is, but please hear me out. Listen to what I have to say, and then I will prove to you what I mean.
Okay, we're still listening.
As I told you, I've collected a lifetime's worth of stains. I was covered with every imaginable dirt, grit, and grime. Oh, I had fooled myself into ignoring the existence of these stains for years. But all the while they were there, whether I admitted seeing them or not. The irony is that even though the wrinkles and the worn parts of me now seem better, as if healed, the stains seemed to show up twice as clearly when I was on the shoulders of the man on trial.
I don't understand.
That's what makes it even more fascinating. Remember I told you about the hideous crowd, the one made of thorns? Well, those puncture wounds were deep, and the bleeding wouldn't stop flowing from his head. While he stood there, drops of blood fell on me and splattered as they hit my one spine fabric. That's when it happened, I tell you.
What happened?
When the blood touched the parts of me that were stained from a lifetime of abuse and neglect, the stains disappeared as though they had never existed. My color returned in a brilliance beyond that of my original royal splendor. And each time a drop of blood reached a blemish in my being, I could feel the transforming power that revealed every inch of stain. Oh, what a marvelous feeling. What a marvelous reality. Here, look at me. Look at me. Do you see any stains on me now? Do you? Oh, sure, I'm still wrinkled and worn in places. That's because I'm old and getting older. But there are no stains on me, not at all. The blood of the humble man who was crucified, even though he was found innocent, has washed me beyond clean. His blood has washed me pure.
Yes, you're right. There is not one spot on you. His blood has made you completely free from any stains, even the older and most difficult ones. What power there was in that blood.
Please don't spend time looking at me. Yes, I am cleansed with his blood, but so are you. Jesus' blood was shed to cleanse all people for all time. With his blood was shed to make the people pure who were stained with grit and grime, old and new. His blood was shed for all people of all time who believe his cleansing through faith. And there's even more than that. After he has cleansed you, after that you don't need to worry about being thrown in the corner rag pile of life, because the people he cleanses, he takes with him to live a royal life in the palace of his Father. You have been washed with the blood of the King of Kings.
Thank you for being such a stirring witness.
Oh, be careful. Be careful not to get any more stains on you. But if you do, ask him to wash them away with his blood. He will, you know. He will.